We are talking through a series on fear. So if you are visiting or this is one of your first weeks, we have been through talking about terrorism, talking about identity theft and whether Big Brother is watching you, which he is. That's why you get all those weird Facebook ads whenever you just talk about something. And then we've started talking through last week was within the fear study from Chapman University within the United States. They kind of do this polling data, and we found that 5 of the top 10 things that people are fearful about within the United States, 5 of them are pollution, climate change related. And so we started last week, and I realized at the very beginning that I was going to have way too much information because there is a lot of information out there. And so this is part 2. What I will tell you is, if you weren't here last week, I'll give you some today, but it's helpful to kind of grab some of that stuff from last week. I'm going to start with some scripture, and then we'll kind of rehash some of the science stuff. And here's what I will tell you at the very beginning that you need to know, and then I will tell you again at the end. This is what my gramp said, whenever you do a sermon, you need to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them, because people aren't smart enough to get it the first time. And some of that is true, is sometimes we need to go over it over and over again. So here's the thing that you have to understand. This is a very large and complex issue, and my role is not to tell you what is right or what is wrong. It is to speak to the fear. So I'll say that again. It is to speak to the fear. The series is not on how can I educate you on things that are going on in the world. It's how can I help you say, what does the Bible say? How does my role as a Christian fit into this big situation and dispel fear? Now, some of you may not have that. Those of us that live in the Midwest, we don't really have a lot of fear towards climate change and pollution and stuff. I think last week when I had people raise their hand, it was maybe 2 out of all the services that were really like, yeah, that really does, I'm really kind of worried about that. Most of us don't. But clearly the rest of the United States does. And if you lived in California where it's a rolling brownout every other day and they want you to have electric cars, but they don't have electricity for those cars, just know some of that is coming here. That eventually, with certain things that are going on within mandates and regulations on what can be used for energy, we will get to the place where we don't get to have energy every time we want it to. So some of this is coming, it just hasn't hit close to home, and some of us need to be able to converse with other people around this issue. So, all of that to say, I am not going to tell you what is or isn't right, what you should or should not do. I will help speak to the fear. The series is on fear and anxiety and those things that we struggle with, not on the rights and wrongs. Okay? Acknowledge that with the head nod, and then I'll tell you that again later. Thank you, Jeff. You're giving me a great head nod. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pray. We're going to jump in and cover a few scriptures that we did last week because you have to grab all 3 of these scriptures as one kind of cohesive unit. This is the Bible from beginning to end in 3 kind of segments as it pertains to this. So I invite you to pray with me so that we can kind of clear our hearts and minds, and then we will jump in. Spirit, I ask that a morning that maybe of busyness or maybe things that went right or wrong or things that we did or didn't get to have that we wanted, or maybe it's just a different sort of day for us. Maybe things with family aren't the way that we desire. I pray that through it all, that here now for just maybe a few minutes, you would speak truth and clarity, that you would put all of the extra voices in our lives, all of the things vying for our attention and our mental space, that you would put pause on those and that you would speak, that you would push past the things that are at the forefront of our hearts and minds, and that you would find your place there. Just like that early days, the fateful day in the garden, you took dirt of the ground, Adamah, and you spoke life. And there was Adam. Lord, this morning, speak life. Speak it over the things that we understand. Speak it over the things we don't understand. Speak it over our anxieties, our fears, and our what-ifs, so that through it all we can rely and lean on you. In your powerful name, Amen. Okay, we're jumping full on into the very end of the Bible, Revelation 21. Some of this is quick recap, so I'm not going to go too thorough, but chapter 21 of Revelation. This is John on the island of Patmos. He gets to see a vision after enduring some very crazy things in his life. From a historical standpoint, the Romans actually tried to boil him alive, and it didn't work. Like, there's actual historical documents that they tried to do that, and so he's still alive to see these things, to tell you about them. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. New? For the first heaven and earth had ceased to exist, and the sea existed no more. Now, here's one of those things that you can put on the shelf of possibly useful or useless knowledge. So here we have new heaven and new earth he sees coming. Old heaven and earth, the one that you're in right now, ceases to exist. No more sea. So think back to the garden. You have the land, the firmament, the sea, and all of the creation. Those things are now replaced. What we don't find here is more sea. You have to read further. I'm not going to get into it today. But you find a river of life flowing through the city of God that at its base has the tree with the leaves for the healing of the nations. So, from a strange sort of biblical standpoint, you could look there and go, the only place for water is living water. The only place is heavenly water. And that's why further down in the passage it says, whoever asks, I give freely of this water. That's for another sermon, for another day. Verse 2. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God. And one seated on the throne said, look, behold, I am making all things new. And then he said to me other things. So the thing to grasp here is we are not clinging to this in some sort of weird determinism or fatalism. That, well, in the end, God's going to make it all new anyway, so what do we care? Like, this isn't go out and buy a whole bunch of cars and litter out the window and crank up the emissions or what have you. Like, whatever your thing is that you think of as being pollution, that's not saying that we should just do that. It's not just saying in the end, well, we know how it's going to end, so it doesn't really matter. This isn't a good example would be, well, I'm going to trade my car in tomorrow, so I'm going to go and just beat it into the ground today because it's somebody else's problem. It's not my problem. Like, because we long and hope that any day in our lifetime is when Jesus would return and we would see new heaven and new earth. But then some of us actually long and hope, maybe not in a biblical sense, that maybe I don't want that because I kind of like my life right now. Like, if you really poke at that button. So the thing to keep in mind here is there is hope. That hope is new heavens, new earth, restoration. Everything is brought into completion, but not yet. And that's where we get Romans. So Paul is writing to the Roman church where they have a bit of a oddity between the Jewish people getting kicked out of Rome and then they come back in and start to struggle with the other now Gentile or kind of non-pagan Christians now that haven't grown up in the family of God. And so they struggle with what it's really like to be the people. What does it really look like? And so we have Revelation 21 that tells us where we're going. We have Romans 8 that tells us where we are now. This is where we're at. For I consider that our present sufferings, that's the things that they struggle with during that day, cannot even be compared to the coming glory that will be revealed to us. He starts it off saying, know that it gets better. Know that we know how it ends. This is kind of like when you tell somebody that you're going to watch a football game or a baseball game, and you say, don't tell me how it ends. I want to be able to be surprised. But then you see it as you're scrolling through, or if you like watching those like reality shows where you want to know who wins the voice, but you don't want to know. And then you're watching them later, and then suddenly you see it in the feed that somebody won. You know how it ends, but you still experience the ups and the downs. We know how it ends. Verse 19, for the creation, that is this place, eagerly waits for the revelation of the sons of God. Creation is desiring God's sons and daughters to be revealed. It wants them. There is something inextricably linked between us and the place that we are. You should gather that from when I pray almost every time. And God took Adamah, which is the Hebrew word for literally ground. He takes Adamah and he says, live, Hayah, and you get Adam. So from Adamah, dirt, you get dirt man. That there is a relationship here that the ground, the air, the whole ecosystem longs for God's people to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to futility. Now this is what you should hear is the fall. This is Eve eats the fruit, Adam eats the fruit, and God says, now it can't be the way that I really wanted it to be. You made a different choice than I intended. And everything suffered. So the creation, not willingly, but because God subjected it. But he subjected it in hope. Verse 21. In hope that the creation itself will be set free. Set free from bondage and decay. From the pollution. From all of these things. Into the glorious freedom of God's children. No, from bondage and decay into the glorious freedom of God's children. So suddenly you are inextricably linked in there again. Not only does it long to know God's family, its hope is in them. Verse 22. For we know that this whole creation groans and suffers together until now. Not only this, but we ourselves also, those that have the first fruits, that is the Spirit, groan inwardly as we eagerly await our adoption. That is the redemption of our bodies. For in hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. But who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we eagerly wait with endurance. He kind of wraps that together to say there is hope, and sometimes it's not a crystal clear picture, because if it was, then you wouldn't have something to hope for. Now, that's the biblical standpoint. We have where we're going is Revelation, and where we are now is the Romans passage, that we're in this state of the fall, the struggle of creation, longing for God's children to be revealed. And then we have this whole other topic of how does that fit in with we talked about pollution and climate change and stuff. Where'd Kish go? I'm going to have him come back up. Kish, come back up. I caught him looking down, not paying attention. So if you were here, here's the quick analogy is climate change has some of this element where, don't worry, I won't mess up your hair, but mine would get messed up if I put it on me, so I'm not going to do that. Over time, when we begin to fill carbon emissions and stuff into the atmosphere, when plants and animals, when cows chew up grass and have to puke it up and chew it up and chew it up and all these different stomachs, some of you are going, methane gas. Methane gas goes into the air and you begin to see this. And then over time, those layers get heavier and heavier. And eventually it gets a little harder to breathe. If you've ever been to Mexico City or some of those places, just stay right there. And it's just like that. The way that you can figure this out is if you wear a mask and some of you wear glasses, you know when you breathe and you get all that fog and you can't see anything. Constant battle. That the sun puts rays in and they can't get back out because the layer begins to hold it in place. Okay, you can go sit down. I was wondering if you were going to take it off or not. You can just set it down. So that's the mental picture. That gives you the boiled down, really easy version. Tim, let's just go through some of those slides real quick. We started out with you get to see the red. That red is starting to happen. We also talked about that there's a temperature fluctuation. You can do the next one where you see that even all of the different national things can't track where it is, and some of that brings in a level of margin of error. And the reality is it's getting warmer. Things are getting warmer. We play a role in that. That is undeniable. You can go outside in Mexico City and go, oh my goodness, I got to go back in. I can't hardly breathe. That is obvious. Now, what role that plays within the grander scheme is yet to be seen. We can speculate. We can have educated guesses and hypothesis. And you can see the next one, Tim, kind of gives us a little ecosphere sort of thing where you can see that it's all kind of linked together. You have heat that comes in that creates some melting. Melting creates more water. More water messes with pH levels, also increases humidity as things get warmer. More humidity means bigger storms, also means that it's droughts in some areas, and so then it just goes, and the cycle goes and goes and goes. And then you're left with, what do we do? That's where we left off last week. So that's where you get to come in is, so what? No right, no wrong. How do we fix it? This is a real question. You have to answer me, otherwise I'll just stand here and look funny for a while.
No more cars.
No more cars? I told you there was no right or wrong answers. What about electric cars? What else? Oh, veggie people.
Take me now.
Carrie had a, was it pt.2 that you ate, the veggie thing? Like she's like, oh, try a whole new buffalo or something. Beyond buffalo. Plant-based, not meat-based. She's like,
what's buffalo? Like,
thought it was a buffalo chicken, went up and was like,
chicken.
Chicken doesn't taste like chicken. Oh, that's not chicken. That's like a meat substitute. Oh, okay. Not the same. Okay, what else? There's a whole lot of room. We got to solve the world's climate change and pollution problems right here. Less people. So you are condoning us not doing anything about COVID so that can wipe out a few? No, I'm just messing with you. There is a relation, if you watched last week, of the temperature going up and the number of people is an exponential growth, and we're just under 8 billion people right now, and 10 is going to be like that. Next, what else? Be or eat? Be. What do you mean by that, Lane? I don't know. How do you spell efficient? Is it I-E-N?
I-C.
Shoot. Do better. Do be better. What else?
We all get Teslas.
All get Teslas. Elon's going to go to Mars sooner than he thought. I'll just put electric cars in that too. Recycle. Sorry, that was Red Robin, not recycle. There's some really big ones that y'all aren't saying. Colonize a different planet. Trees. I'm sorry. My job is talking, not spelling. 2 E's, not 2 S's.
Conservation and restoration of grasslands and forests.
I think that's how you spell conservation. What? What?
Grow your own food.
Grow your own food. I did learn last week that, did you know that the corn that farmers plant, they can't harvest that and replant it? No, literally, they have a lease on that genetic material, and so everything has to go, and then they have to buy new, right? I was talking to a guy that's involved in that. Like, you would think, oh, I'll just save some of that and I'll plant it next year. No, that's illegal. Asia, do you have one? He keeps pointing at you.
told me to say more ice.
More ice?
Less flooding. Just say.
More ice. Inside family joke, Kishmar has a weird fixation with ice. He likes to eat ice all the time. Maybe it's a Jamaica thing. There's
from sustainable companies for sustainable products.
Say that again. I didn't hear.
Aveda.
Aveda.
Use
Oh, yes.
sustainable products and support small farmers.
Carrie works for a salon where all of their shampoo and stuff smells like dirt and tree sap and doesn't have any chemicals. It really does. Like, you walk in and I go, I don't like this smell. She's like, I think it smells good. Okay. There's no chemicals in it. So there's some really big ones that you're not hitting on.
Get rid of cell phones.
Say that again.
Get rid of cell phones.
No cell phones. Cell no.
Windmills.
Windmills. There you go. Wind. Nuclear. 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 Right? Okay. What else? Solar. See, now you're catching. What else? Noah. Plastic bottles. No more plastic bottles. There was one over here. Was that a Burbach child that was yelling some answers? Macaroni. Macaroni. Okay. Cheese or no cheese? I don't know how to spell macaroni, so you get MACC. Okay, this is a good place to start. So here's a bunch of options of what we can do about it, right? So here are things you should take note, because you didn't even say that you could buy more electric cars or put solar panels on your house, or maybe just drive less, bicycles, walking, take the bus. Like, there's still a whole lot of stuff that we could put on here. But the question is okay, here's a bunch of what? Anybody that lives within the modern world knows that you are not driven by whats. You are driven by whys. Why you do something creates sustainability in the effectiveness of doing it. So if you choose to do something, it works for a while. This is kind of like you do a diet just so you could kind of crash through and get done. And then when it's over, you're like, well, I don't really want to do that anymore. And then you look in the mirror and go, wait, well, yeah, I kind of do, because I don't like what's going on here. Why helps you move through. Genesis 1. Why? God blessed them. This is when he's talking to the beginning stages of humanity here. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and every creature that moves on the ground. And then God said, I now give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the earth, every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And all of the animals of the earth, to every bird of the air and all of the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has life and living breath in it. I give each green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. There was evening and there was morning on the sixth day. So we travel all the way back to the beginning of creation, and the mandate that he gives is, this is yours. Take care of it. Plain and simple. Like, that seems like you should just get it and go, oh, okay. Has anybody been in Lyle's car? Family of CP, how many of you sit in the back seat? Just the two girls? Has anybody decided that they should just fill their house with endless amounts of stuff and garbage? I mean, here's the trend that we're going on. Like, did you choose to take a shower this morning or not? Do you choose to continually accumulate stuff? Are you a hoarder of junk or garbage of things? Or do you care? The reason that I point out Lyle's car, if you've ever opened Lyle's car, it's quite possible that a whole bunch of wrappers and garbage will fall out of the back. Like, you go to get in and we're going to go somewhere. He's like, oh, just shove it over. I'm like, I don't think I can shove it any further. Like, there is so much stuff. I got out this morning and looked in the back of Craig's car and I go, dude, what are you doing in your car? There's like a landfill in the back seat. He's like, it's not me, it's my girls. Is it mom? No, it's not mom. We take care of things that we value, right? Things that you have, you value them and you take care of them to some degree, or at least you would hope that your parents taught you to take care of the things that you have, especially if you have to pay for them. Now here's where we're at is God says from the beginning, this is yours. From the dirt that I took you out of, Adamah to Adam, it is yours. And what we do is we just don't really care all that much. We just kind of listen to it and go, oh yeah, that's a good story. But the literal mandate is, this is yours, take care of it. And all throughout Scripture, this never ever gets retracted. Ever. Never, ever, 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 ever gets retracted. Now, maybe in the new heavens and the new earth when God says something else later, that's a possibility. But he desires you to care for this because it's yours. Not subdue and slash cut for us everywhere, but be responsible. Now, here's what we have to do in order to make it any further is to muddy the waters a whole lot more. Tim, put that next slide up there. Thank you, sir. So here is a little bit of temperature readings over the last, since 500. And you can look at that. It's harder to see up here because there's a shaded area and a constant green line. The shaded area is just kind of the guess, and the green line is the average between the guess. When you get to the blue, that's when we can actually have temperature readings. Now, the way that they take these temperature readings is, and all these readings is they go up into the polar ice caps and they start digging holes. And as they dig down, they didn't know what they would find. What they found was more ice. And so if you have ice and it has little clouds in it or little air bubbles, they can take that ice, break it down, evaluate what's it made of, how much of certain chemicals are in there. Up until when did we blow all the nuclear weapons? 40s and 50s that we really started testing a whole bunch of stuff. We can't do those tests anymore because we messed with the atmosphere doing those things. But prior to that, there were certain forms of carbon, I think it was like 11 or 13 or 14, that we could go back and test how much of that was in there. And they can give you specific readings. Now, this is what it looks like. Temperature is all over the place. You can see that it goes up. And notice, too, on the side where the legend is, what is the degree variation to the top? Half a degree. 0.5. But because it's zoomed in, it looks really big. Tim, go to the next one. This is zoomed out even further. How many of you know how old science thinks the Earth is? 4 trillion. 4 to 4.5 billion years. That's what science says. Today, I'm not going to talk about whether science is telling us what is true or not true. I'm saying, based on science, this only goes back to 800,000 years. That's a lot of ups and downs, right? And if you get to 0, that's not even into where we are now. Just look at it for a second. That should make you go, oh, yeah, well, wait, are we getting warmer because we get warmer? It seems to get warmer and precipitously not get warmer. That there were seasons where there was times where there was no polar ice caps. What also muddied it a little is Arctic ice caps are thawing while down in the South Pole they're actually enlarging. There's more ice forming there. What it does is it forms and then it thaws and it forms and it thaws, but what they're finding is it's forming further and further out from the center of where it was within the last few years. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know how to explain this. I talked to Lyle Van Hemert the other night, and he's like, if you factor in the 4 billion years of how old the Earth is and the temperature, and it's like you as an individual person having a temperature for a matter of 2 seconds. Does that mean that you have a temperature forever? Well, I don't know. I don't understand half this stuff. Or even further, there's a full study on what's going to happen with the oceans. Put that one up there. That one has the wording. Not that one, go to the next one. I think I got them backwards. Nope, go back up. The words. Okay. Future rise in global mean sea level. This is how much the average water level is going to be. And I'm going to jump down a little bit just to not bore you with some of the other words. Global mean sea level will rise between 0.43 meters. Think the rest of the world does not use inches and feet. That's just us that continue to do that. 0.43 meters, which in parentheses is actually between 0.29 and 0.59 in the likely range. Anybody know the metric system? You're talking on the low end about 11 inches. Now then we go a little bit further and it says between 0.43 meters and 0.84 meters. And this is actually between 0.6 and 1.1 in the likely range by 2100. So you have at the low range maybe like 11 inches and maybe a little over 3 feet when you get towards the other end. Now you go, okay, so the sea's gonna raise. Like I saw actually I think it was more like a scare tactic where it had a kid with a baseball bat and it showed him one year with like the water under his feet and the next year like the water up to here, like he was holding it and it was like, when are you gonna care? And the reality is we're talking this. Now globally, but then go to the next one and explains what it means by likely. Here's all of this for the UN stuff, and you find that there's 0 and 5%. Somewhere in the middle, just above 66% is likely. And that's not even fully between the people that agree. That's 17 to 83% range of possibility. So likely means, let's shake the dice, and I think it's somewhere in there. I mean, between 11 inches and 1.5 feet or 3.5 feet, roughly. Well, that's a big difference. So even all the scientists don't have it figured out. Now, and then when we look at this, you go, some of this stuff is really great, right? What happens if you have a Tesla? Where does the energy come from for that when you plug it in? It comes from coal or it comes from gas. You're still burning electricity somewhere, right? So this is that thing when you were a kid or maybe you're a parent and you're like, will you guys just shut the lights off when you leave a room? Why are all the lights on everywhere? Why is every TV on? Why is everything on all the time? Every single switch that's on draws electricity. Now we don't think about it because we didn't grow up where you went over and you struck a match and you lighted something on fire to actually have it produce light or heat. But that still happens. You have to burn things to get the electricity in the majority of the Midwest. So even when we have all this stuff, and then you have like wind and all these, put that one up that has the ranges. Solar energy is 24.5% effective. That means for every bit of energy, 75% is lost. That also doesn't take into account how the raw materials and the non-recyclable nature of solar panels. What do you do with them after they're done? They're full of stuff that you can't ingest as a human. Now, Elon is working on some of these things, but he's not quite there yet. Wind energy, you go through northwest Iowa and southwest Minnesota, you're still only looking at about 34%. And you can follow the hydro and the coal and the natural gas, follow it all the way over. Who's ready to have a nuclear reactor? Some of you that would study it would say absolutely. Now, I'll leave you to study it, but from what I found is they are by far the safest. We just had a few oopses and a few bombs along the way that actually told us, you should be scared. Well, why should you be scared? Well, because the people that have oil, the people that have natural gas, the people that have coal, the people that want you to have solar, the people that want you to have wind energy, all need some dollars. Right? See, you can have a Tesla or any electric car in France and do awesome, because France is almost completely on the nuclear grid. They plug in, literally it's chemical reaction creates heat. And when they're done, they put it in these big silo type things. That I had a whole bunch of pictures. We don't have time for those. It's not as scary as you'd think. Now, all of this, you go, okay, Ken, where are you going to go with all of this stuff? The point is, when you keep digging, you will find more things to be anxious and fearful about. And you won't find the answer. I told you last week, Greta will not give you the answer. The internet will not give you the answer. I searched and listened to so many different things and read so many things over the last couple of weeks. It's still one of those where you go, yes, what we're doing is having an effect. Yes, the earth is warming in cycles, and I don't know if that means we're in one of those cycles or we're causing one of those cycles. Yes, there might be more water, but wait, there's more freezing in the south, and I don't understand it all. But what I can tell you is, from the foundations, God said, this is yours, and care for it. In the middle, he says, even the dirt of the ground longs for the sons and daughters of God to be made known. We know what drives us in our hope. Resurrection bodies, new heaven and new earth. The in-between time is the part where the fear sneaks in. That's the part that we're poking at. That's the part that we're trying to address. And the thing that, if we were really pragmatic, the best possible thing we could do is not just simply care for the creation, but make more disciples. The dirt of the ground, the birds of the sea, the air that you breathe, longs for the sons and daughters, the children of God, to be revealed. So go make more. I mean, that is the underlying mandate here, as we know from the beginning that we are to care for this. I'm not telling you how or what or why. I'm just telling you it's not as easy as we all think. Even all the greatest plans. I didn't even show you the Green New Deal that's 90-some trillion dollars, and we only make 21 trillion in a year, and we're already in a deficit of 22 trillion. You can't look to the government to fix it for you. Everybody has an agenda. But what you can do is simply begin to care. You can begin to look at the people around you not as just people, but as people that can help bring creation into that new place. I think the point that Paul is trying to make is that while you're here, you're to do everything you can to bring about what new heavens and new earth will be. You are the first fruits. You are the foretaste. You are the little small piece of cake that you get before your actual wedding day to decide whether you like the lemon cream or the cranberry one or the chocolate one. You get just a little bit because then it's really good. Now you ask yourself, do I live that way? Am I a little taste of what heaven and earth will be, or am I just here? People want heaven and earth, the new one. They long for it so much that they will fight nonstop in the news media over things. And the reality is the way that you can help that is by being a good Christian. And that seems kind of stupid to say from the front, but exactly what I should say, right? Well, the answer is Jesus and be like him. Because it is. He says, I'm leaving. This is yours. Take care of it. Endure, because the day will come where you get to taste from the river of the water of life, and that will be glorious. And when you're not sure that you can, CP, why don't you just come up? I already talked way too much, or you guys sang too much at the beginning, I'm not sure. So Paul tells us that creation is waiting for us, is in this state of kind of bondage. And what I didn't do was finish his thought. He says that we have to be hopeful through endurance, that it will have ups and downs and there will be struggles. We won't know what to do. But in that same way, that Spirit helps us in our weakness. For we don't even know how we should pray, but the Spirit himself intercedes with us in groanings. For he who searches our hearts knows our minds, because the Spirit intercedes on our behalf, on the behalf of those who do God's will. And we know that all things work together for good, for those who love the Lord. This will give you a whole lot of what ifs and could be's and maybe next times or you shoulds. And the reality is God simply says, care. Like really care, as if it was yours. And don't be fearful, because you know how it ends.